I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I have Marc Cesar with me. Marc, he started his real estate journey with wholesaling in 2015. He closed multiple deals in the Philadelphia area, and as recently as 2019, sort of moved on to the multifamily space. So Marc, thanks for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. It's an honor for me to be here with you as well.
Yeah, and people won't be listening to this today, but Marc is doing me the very big service of being here on his birthday, actually. So we'll say happy birthday to Marc. Marc, why don't you go ahead and sort of tell people your story, your background, kind of where you got started with real estate, and then we'll just kind of take it from there.
Sure, sounds good. So basically, I'm a Brooklyn, New York kid. 34, I'm 35 now, I feel old, but I started my journey back in 2012. I got introduced to the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I forgot who gave it to me. Might have been my wife, then girlfriend, and she gave me the book, and I guess that's like the best book that changed my whole mindset and dynamic of entrepreneurship, as I'm sure it is for every majority of the listeners out there. And it really just opened my eyes to a different world out there, more than waking up at XYZ time in the morning, stuck in traffic and punching the clock and coming back home and doing all over again. So I really loved the book. I think I pretty much read that book a couple of dozen times, and real estate was the deciding factor. It proved to show that there's so much flexibility in real estate. There's majority of the wealthy out there dating back from how long has always invested in real estate, and it's always been a wealth strategy. And I just really wanted to find out where I fit in that cycle to sort of get out of the rat race, as Robert Kiyosaki so eloquently put it. And I started with pretty much nothing. So I was a college kid. I didn't have much money. Job was part-time job. So I was really lacking a lot of resources, and pretty much I had to sort of hustle my way through the entrepreneurial sector, really grit and grind basically. And thank God technology was already booming, so we had the YouTubes, we had the social media, so we had access at our fingertips to a lot of stuff at that tenure. And wholesaling just made sense for me at that time. I wanted to sort of grow my cash and get that pile of cash. And again, I will emphasize I was still a kid, so kids will do what kids do. Teenager will do what teens do. We'll sort of just spend money frivolously and not really care about it. And I started learning how to wholesale, and it took me about 2 years to get my first deal done. So I think I did my first deal in 2015, and I tried to do it in New York. It did not work. The market and the margins were just too tough to tap into. So like most people, the typical individual will probably take that as the loss and really quit and throw in the towel. But I decided to think outside the box and I say, hey, you know what? 50 states, let's try somewhere else. And I just happened to see a post on Facebook about my then partner, who was making a killing in wholesale in Philadelphia. And I just reached out to her. We never knew each other from Adam. And I just reached out to her and say, hey, I can provide the leads. I'll do the market on my end. You be the boots on the ground. Let's make it happen. And, she definitely did not believe me at first. And as soon as we hung up the phone, I just started writing. I wrote about 200-300 letters, handwritten, stamped, and everything. And I mailed it out. And within a week, we had an investor who called us and say, hey, I ran out of money. I want to sell this deal. how can you help me? And she was surprised, and we netted 10K out of that deal. And that was, again, that's 2 years later, and it was such a breather. It was like, wow, okay, this thing is real, it's doable.
Yeah.
I want to do it again. So, we definitely made it happen. I made a killing throughout that time. Again, Philadelphia at that point in time in 2015, it was still in a market that was starting to emerge, where you can probably find houses for literally $500. And I've seen it happen. I did not believe it, and I've seen it. So it comes to show that resilience is very important in this space, and especially in anything that you do. You have to be resilient. You have to learn to put yourself out there and step outside your comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's 100% true. The points of that you just made there. And also, I think that, sort of your story there kind of demonstrates all of that, right? So, you started out, what were you doing? You said you had a part-time job. Were you just kind of trying to figure it out when you started wholesaling?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I was either working at Santander Bank at that point in time, or MTA Bridges and Tunnels at that time. I can't recall
Yeah.
exactly the date,
Yeah.
but it wasn't really. It was pretty much just a means and end, just to cover my
Right.
daily living expenses and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah. A job to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And so then you started with wholesaling, which I think, well, I guess do me a favor, Marc, and kind of actually define wholesaling for any listeners who don't know, because I think it's, to a lot of people getting started, it might be something that they hear about, but maybe don't understand exactly how that works. So maybe explain the process a little bit.
Sure, sure. Well, wholesaling is basically where it's just a glorified middleman, basically. It is where we come in as an individual or a company. Uh, we market for distressed sellers and distressed assets. So individuals that are underwater, that are facing foreclosure, or they just pretty much just vacated the house and out of sight, out of mind, because for whatever reason. So we would come in and typically just market to those sellers. We'll find them, we'll contact them, and we'll negotiate with them. Hey, we see this house here. We see this house at 123 Main Street. It's abandoned, it's vacant, and it's an eyesore in the neighborhood. We'll find out what is your pain point. What's your issue? What's the story? Why did you leave it? Why don't you want it? And from there, we'll gain the motivation from that seller, and we will negotiate that. Try to buy for 50 cents to 75 cents on the dollar, and by doing so, we'll put it on a contract, and we'll have equitable interest in that property, and in turn, we'll flip that contract and that equitable interest over to an end buyer who's either going to fix and flip it and put it back to the market for a retail buyer to come in and move into it, or they'll just fix it and rent it and keep it in their portfolio.
Sure, sure. So yeah, that's a great explanation. Thank you. And I would argue that you're not just a glorified middleman. I think you're actually doing a lot of the work for, in my opinion, sort of the flipping and renovating to rent. Although they're different endpoints, they're kind of a similar process, right? You're still renovating that house, and then you're either going to just sell it right away, like you said, or you're going to set it up to rent and hold on to that long term. But you can really break that process down into sort of two components, right? You have to obtain the deal. If you don't get a good deal, then it's not going to make sense from a numbers point to do a flip, or even do, some people refer to it as a burr. But so I think the wholesaling side of it takes one of those very, I think, difficult jobs out of that. Like if I were flipping houses, I want to buy from wholesalers. I don't want to do I don't want to do that part. I think that's a lot of work. So I guess I would just say I give you more credit than than maybe you just gave yourself by saying glorified middleman. I think it's a very important part of the process, and either a flipper or a burr type of investor has to do that themselves, or they have to find a reputable wholesaler to get those deals from. And then so when you wholesale, you get essentially a wholesaling fee that then
Right.
So that's also calculated into those numbers.
Yeah. So you definitely you get to choose your assignment fee, which as they call it in the space. And of course, you want to have the end buyer in mind, because they're taking majority of the risk, because they're putting up the capital, they're taking out the loan. and so forth. So you want to always have them in mind first above your fee. So you want to make sure that there's enough margin for them to make money on the back end since they're taking a bulk
Right.
of the risk.
Right.
And if that's the case, they'll be glad to pay you whatever. They won't argue with you if you decide that, hey, we have property, for example. We found a property that's $100,000. The seller asking for it. We got the seller down to 40,000, and it needs about 10,000 in rehab, and they can at the after repair values way over 130. A buyer will jump at that, and as long as the numbers make sense and you can validate it, you can charge this. You can pay yourself $20,000, and I've done it plenty of times. But the thing with wholesale nowadays is that a lot of wholesalers are so focused on the assignment fee, and they see that, hey, I can make $50,000 and I don't care about the buyer. As long as the buyer buys it, I'm okay. You can't think that way, because again, you have to put yourself in that in the buyer's shoes. Whereas, okay, if I'm the buyer, will I overpay for something and make $10,000 on it? I'm taking the risk of flipping it and dealing with contractors, the headaches and the hassle. I'd rather go to someone who knows how to wholesale, who knows how to run the numbers, and who's not going to be greedy and will leave meat on the bone for me as the investor to make money as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great point, right? Provide value to others before
Yeah,
yourself, and you'll get it back in in multiples of that. So
or
I think if you create that good reputation for thinking about that end investor, you're going to be the guy that they're going to want to buy deals from. You're going to be the guy that they trust, and so you're going to definitely have more transactional activity that way than you would if you were just trying to squeeze every dollar out of each deal for yourself before you pass it on to someone else. So makes total sense, and I love that philosophy. Another thing in regards to wholesaling that I think comes up a lot, and I know it's sort of regional or state by state, but so did you get your real estate license? Were you required to get your real estate license? How did that sort of work for you?
I did. Great question. I did not have to get the license. Then that is, I pretty much just really did business because I lived in New York and I had to do business in Philadelphia.
Mhm.
So the township of Pennsylvania, basically, they required you to have the DBA. So you'd have to do business as, since you're working in two different cities and so forth. So I did it that way. But again, as I mentioned, a lot of has changed over the years. And from when I'm not currently wholesaling at the moment, but a
Yeah.
lot has changed. So a lot of cities are starting to crack down on wholesaling, whereas they're putting in place systems where either you can only wholesale for a certain amount in that state. I know Chicago's doing it now. I think Philadelphia, you have to get some sort of licensing. I don't believe it's a real estate license, but you have to get some form of licensing to validate that you are a wholesaler. So they're cracking down because a lot of illegal activities being done occurring through
Yeah.
that space. So this is why I say it's very imperative that if you're working with a wholesaler, you want to make sure that you're working with someone who's above board, who's on the up and up, and make sure that they have your best interest as well as the sellers and yourself and that wholesalers at heart.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, you know, it goes to show you've got to kind of stay on top of what the regulations are in your area, right? As the wholesaler or whatever, as the, whatever area of real estate you're in, you better make sure that you're sort of doing it uh, legally and ethically. So I think that, yeah, it seems like from what I've heard, a handful of sort of bad apples in the wholesaling space are making it more difficult for the people that are actually sort of doing it the way it should be done. So unfortunate that would happen, but I think that sometimes people try to take advantage of the system. So you were wholesaling. Now you transitioned to multifamily. Did you sort of go straight from wholesaling to multifamily? Did you do anything else in between? Like, did you flip any of your houses or anything like that, I guess?
I did not. I wish I did. And everyone who asks me that question, I always tell them I always slap myself in the back of the head because at the point in time when I jumped into wholesaling, as I mentioned prior, houses were really cheap. You can find,
Yeah.
I've wholesaled houses for $500, $800. But again, being a teenager and I'm coming into that kind of money and not having a proper structure or mentor to sort of navigate me and tell me what I should do, I pretty much, of course, I reinvested in my business, but I spent my money. Of course, I have no problem saying that. And I hope this is a learning lesson for anyone else out there who's listening. But I never, I regret not buying assets then, because now when I'm looking at the Philadelphia market, even though I'm not wholesaling currently, a house that used to cost $2,000, you can't find it for nothing less than, 100,000 and plus.
Right.
So the equity in that area, in whatever area you're looking into, has skyrocketed dramatically. And if I had positioned myself and actually bought something and held on to it, or just paid the taxes and, fixed it up over time, it would have been a win-win for me now. But again, you live, you learn. But that's mistakes that I work on not making again. And I encourage people, if you see a market is struggling, analyze the market, study the market. If it makes sense for you to buy and hold it, do so. Because again, and just study the markets to see when the trends are, when there's going to be a turn, because you never know when the turn is going to be. It may take a few, it may take a year, it may take 5, but again, if you position yourself properly, you can ride that wave and make that turn, and it can be very profitable for you in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a, that saying about, you the best thing to do is sort of buy real estate and wait. You don't wait to buy real estate, you buy real estate and wait. It really just speaks to the time factor, the advantage of time factor in real estate. It's like over 10, 20 years time, it's going to be real hard for you to find something that didn't dramatically increase in its value through that time. So if you can think long term, and I think, you talk about you were young and didn't necessarily do, all the smart things with the money. Me too. Like I, I worked a lot when I was young. I've always worked, and it's just like, to me, one of my passions in doing this podcast, and also just in the real estate space, is financial education and literacy for young people, right? Because I mean, you said you turned 35 and you feel old. I'm 46. I feel real old. And I just think about, like, if I had started 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, in a larger scale, and thought of the long term, I'd probably be done now. I mean, really, I could already be able to work when I wanted to work, if I wanted to work. And it just speaks to what, if you're willing to kind of, sacrifice a little bit, have maybe not be so focused on only fun when you're young, you'll have that advantage, so that when you're in your 30s and 40s, then you can kind of do whatever you want, and you won't have those money worries. So I actually really, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I do think that's important for other people to see. And, here you are now, successful doing things, but you can still look back and say, hey, if I had just done a few, I mean, you probably held on to 2 of those houses, and you would be in a much better situation, just given the time frame. So so you changed to multifamily. Tell me a little bit about, sort of why that happened, and how that transition worked for you.
Sure. And this goes back to Rich Dad Poor Dad again. Robert definitely depicts the notion of, I guess it comes from the whole monopoly game, where you buy 4 or 5 houses and convert it into one red building. And it stuck with me, and I've always loved that. I've always, of course, living in New York, surrounded by high rises and apartment buildings, I've always wondered, how can I get that? How can I buy that? But I've had a notion in the back of my head that it's only the wealthy 1% who can buy them. Someone who can, out of nowhere, just say, hey, here's $1 million, cut a check for $1 million and buy them. And, that roadblock, that mental block sort of kicked in, and I just really avoided apartments, because I felt that, hey, I'm not adequate a sort to actually buy it, because I don't have the financial backing and so forth. And again, 2018, I realized that wholesaling started becoming a job, because again, I was a one-man shop. I did everything on my end, and I did not have the proper system to scale it. So I felt that I did not need another job. I needed passive income. And, as reading books, listening to, a ton of videos, again, as I mentioned earlier, the wealthy, they all invest in real estate and they all have streams of income, passive income that's coming in. So I made it my duty to start reading more about passive income and how to get it. And I stumbled across a gentleman by the name of Michael Blanc. And I watched his webinar and everything just really clicked. And again, I just took the leap of faith and invested in education. I bought into his program, and I think that's the best money I could have ever spent. Pretty penny, but it was really worth it. And it really showed me that anyone can invest in apartment buildings. A regular average Joe like myself with a 9 to 5, I can do it as well because a lot of people are doing it. And I've learned, I had the chance to learn the lingo, learn the verbiage, learn the, how to systemize everything and so forth. And it all clicked. And ever since that, I said, you know what, I want to do apartment buildings because it allows me to actually move towards a legacy factor. And I think the old saying is try to earn the slow dime opposed to the fast dollar. So I did not want to just really focus on having a lump sum of cash because, again, of course, capital gains taxes and so forth will kick in. But I wanted to earn that slow dime where every month I can have that income coming in and I can have the quote unquote mailbox money coming in. So that enticed me a lot. And I definitely wanted to always leave something behind for my children in the event of, something happening. They'll have something to fall back on to cover, their expenses and their lifestyle. So that's what intrigued me about apartment investing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's true. It's kind of, I've had sort of a similar mindset shift myself. I'm a veterinary surgeon. That's my sort of day job, but I have always loved real estate and I've worked in construction and things like that. And so I initially thought, okay, when I'm sort of really ready to get going with it, I was going to flip houses. And what I realized is I don't need another job. I like construction and it's fun. And someday I'll flip houses with my kids just so they can do it. But it's not something that like fits in my life right now. And so as like you kind of got, interested in multifamily because it's not that it's not a lot of work. It's just that once it's in place, then it can provide you with that passive income. And so it's not just this constant, treadmill of trying to get to the next flip or the next wholesale or whatever, sort of line of real estate you're working in. And so once you did that, so you did the Michael Blanc program, and now where are you at? Have you, do you have some deals that you've done? Kind of want to go through where you're at with that?
Sure. So again, in 2019, I actually had a deal, I think under contract was within 6 months of the program. And I was very excited. And for a new guy coming in, I had a 97 unit under contract out in Amarillo, Texas.
Great.
And come due diligence, a lot of things started popping up, and it was just like a whole lot of red flags popping up. And my partners and we decided to back away from the deal, and for good reason, because we could not sort of equate all of these things that were popping up, how we cannot account for them or how we can make it work in our business plan. So we decided to back out. And thankfully we did, and we did not put nothing went hard, no investors lost any money. And that's the main thing about me. When I raised money, and that was my first time raising money, my partner and I, I think we raised slightly over $500,000 for that deal. And my mindset is I want to make sure my investors are protected. Even if I have my money vested into the deal, I want to make sure that my investors' money is protected and they can get their money back. Yep. So we decided not to follow through with that deal, and everyone got their money back. So that was a plus. And I've pretty much been looking at deals ever since then. I did revert backwards, just a sidebar, I did revert backwards in 2020 back to wholesaling. And unfortunately, the pandemic kicked in and my business really took a nosedive. So that definitely told me that, hey, you were good where you were at in multifamily, just go back and start systemizing things. And I've been there ever since. And unfortunately, I've been outbidded in every deal. Like I think I recently got outbidded on the deal 2 weeks ago. It was a 102 unit in North Carolina. I got outbidded as well. So it's a very competitive market right now. A lot of people are willing to pay over asking and pay a premium and not worry about the blowback on the back end. So I can't do that because again, I'm still new. I'm still, gaming, trying to get my first deal done. And I want to be more credible. I don't want to put anyone in jeopardy because again, this is a small business. And if you screw up one time, you're pretty much blackballed. As they say, your first impression is the lasting one. So I definitely want to make sure that my first impression with my first deal is one that is profitable, one that is strategically thought out, and I have a sound business plan that makes sure that my investors are comfortable with and that we can execute. So I'm very meticulous and cautious right now, and I'm looking at a ton of deals, but nothing's really panning out. But I try to be a strategic partner. So I in the event that where I can't find my deal myself, I try to position myself where I can bring value to someone else who has a deal, and as a strategic partner where if they're in need of capital, if they're in need of someone to sign on the loan, if they're in need of someone to source the deal, I try to show where I can bring value within those dynamics. And in return, I don't really ask for much, but if they invite me into the deal, then that's great. If not, at least I know that I helped someone else, get a little closer to their goal and to their dream. Yeah. And in return, I know that I'm going to learn a lot and it's going to reciprocate over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I share a very, very similar experience over the last year in terms of, sort of difficulty in finding deals and things like that. I don't know that we're unique in that. The deals are hard to find. The cap rates are really compressed. There's a lot of people trying to break into syndication. And so, that's where you're getting these, sort of deals, the prices running up and things like that. And I think that, you're 100% right. You have to put the investors first, right? So you can't just, hey, maybe if you're buying it on your own, if you somehow have the ability to buy an apartment complex with just your own money and you want to take a little extra risk, okay, then it's your money. But when you're doing that with other people's money, which is really what syndication is, it's going to be, you need to take that seriously. You need to really be a good steward of their hard-earned capital. So I commend you for being patient. I know how hard it is. So I commend you for that. And I think it's absolutely the 100% way to go. And your point about strategic partnerships is also what I've just tried to be opportunistic, be out there, try and, keep networking, try and meet people and see what value, can be provided to them. And if you get to be a part of the deal, awesome. And that's kind of, I think that's the way to go. And I think in the long run, going that way, I have to imagine I have to believe that it's going to shake out better. There's probably going to be a lot of people that are potentially doing some bad deals just to do a deal. And I don't wish this on them, but if the market takes a downturn, it's probably going to be hard to make those things continue to cash flow and pencil out. So, I'll say this for both of us, just keep on being patient. I totally get where you're at. That's awesome though, Marc. Thanks for sharing that. I would say, what I'd like to do now is kind of get to some of the questions that I like to ask each guest. The name of the podcast is the Know Your Why podcast. And so I would love it if you could share with us what your why is, really what drives you, what pushes you towards success, what allows you to be patient, kind of what is your why in moving forward, and especially in multifamily or life in general?
Sure. My why is, I would say I'm very family driven. So they motivate me a ton because again, I did not grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, with a big family, a big wealthy family. We were normal average Americans, we work hard, and I've seen the struggle and the workload that my parents had to endure, and I've never wanted that for myself or for my children, and I've also wanted to make sure that my parents were taken care of, and enjoy the remaining years of their lives. So everything that I do is solely is very heavily family oriented, and of course, as I mentioned before, I wholeheartedly believe in legacy. I want to leave a legacy factor for my wife and my children, and even that I'm no longer here, where they don't have to worry for anything. They don't have to have a care in the world, where they know that, okay, this month my bills are going to get paid, college tuition is going to get taken care of. If I want to start a business, it's happening. Or if I want to take over the family business that dad took over, that started, we can do that. So I want to make sure that they're taken care of and that legacy can continue, that they know how not to just rely on a 9 to 5, but to be very entrepreneurial minded and take control of your destiny, and just pass that legacy along to the future generations.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's my why is very similar. It's my family. It's really was the birth of my son that sort of made me decide I need to make this happen. So it was that I think they are very motivating. That's really my take on it. Okay, well, tell me something. Tell us the listeners. Tell us something about yourself that maybe people don't know about you. Whether that's a hobby, a guilty pleasure, some hidden skill, or whatever it is. Tell me something that is unique.
Well, I'm very sports. I love sports. I am a big basketball and football fan. I used to play football in high school, and I could have went a little further, but again, I got injured, and that was the end of it. So my hopes of becoming an NFL player were shot down very quickly.
Yeah,
so
that's too common story there.
So yeah, I mean, I love football. I'm a big Eagles fan. Basketball, I'm a big Chicago Bulls fan. So please, guys, don't hate me if you hear this. Yeah, and majority of my time, again, I just really love spending time with my family. I try to make sure every minute I can get with them is worthwhile. Time is short. I don't like wasting time, and I try to make sure that I can instill into them what was instilled into me, and then some.
Yeah, great. How are you an Eagles fan if you live in New York? How does that how did that work out?
I never fancied any New York team for some weird reason. I was just attracted to Philadelphia. I have no idea why. At that point in time when I started liking them, they really were just flourishing, and I saw promise. And ever since then, I've rolled with them. I've rolled the wave ever since then.
Okay, great. Well, I can appreciate fan loyalty. I'm a Patriots fan originally from Boston, so that's my team, and we had a lot of good years, but now it's a little iffy at the moment once Tom Brady left, but we'll see. All right, so tell me, I see we've got some, luckily people will be able to see some of the ways to connect from you or connect with you, and we'll put them in the show notes, but what's the best way for people to reach you, Marc?
The greatest way is on LinkedIn. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can go to linkedin.com/n/Marc Cesar, MarCcesar. I also am very active on. I also host a weekly meetup on my end as well. That is tailor fitted for multifamily investors, whether you're new or you're seasoned. We have content for all classes. Where if you're looking to take a stab into the space, or if you're looking to really build your network and connect with other individuals. Again, I deem myself a people connector, so I strategically created this group where I can connect people. So you can definitely visit that. I do have a link tree with all so many tabs, so many contact different ways you can contact me. So the link tree is linktr.ee/Marc Cesar. Again, it's MarCcesar. You once you go there, you can find all the various ways to contact me and get in touch with me.
Okay, perfect. Like I said, we'll get that stuff in the show notes so that people can reach you in whatever fashion. Tell me what I can do to help you, or anyone listening. What can we do to help you succeed and reach your next set of goals?
Sure. Well, first for starters, I need a deal.
Yeah.
I think we all need deals, but really and truly, I'm looking to, one of my biggest goals this year is to actually get my first syndication done. Whether it be on a smaller scale or a larger scale, I really just want to get that feeling and that win of saying, yes, I did a syndication. It's one that works and everybody's happy in the process. So I definitely would like to connect with individuals who are doing deals and see where I can bring value. And of course, Jason, if you need anything from me, whether it's connection with someone that you may not have come across within our similar network, feel free to reach out. Again, I can provide whatever resource you need. My resources are always at everyone's disposal. But yeah, I'm really looking to just connect with individuals and see where I can fit in on their team and bring that value that they need, or alleviate some pressure from them to make sure that they can focus on what matters to them most.
Yeah, no, that's great. Tell me, I mean, maybe we can make some connection through this podcast too. What do you have specific markets that you're looking in, just so people might know that, if they're focused, if you have similar focuses that might be able to reach out to you?
Sure. I'm heavily focused right now on North Carolina and the northern parts of Florida. So the Tallahassee, Tampa, and Jacksonville markets as well. I tiptoe into Texas here and there. So for Texas, I really look into the Lubbock area, the Amarillos. I try to stray away from the major MSAs as the DFWs, the Houston, because again, so many operators are there, and a lot of big guys, big names have already cornered the market. So I don't believe in competition, and that's one of the things that I preach a lot is I don't believe in competition, because again, we're all going to see the same deals. We're probably speaking to the same brokers. I truly believe instead of competing with each other, let's collaborate and let's see how we can put our heads together and unique skills and buy the deal.
Yeah. No, I love that, Marc. Well, great. Hopefully we can, make some connections here. I very much appreciate you coming and being on the podcast, especially on your birthday. It's a big ask, so I definitely appreciate your time. I guess we'll get out of here for today, but thank you so much, Marc. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, Jason. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my story, and I hope it helps someone out there.
Yeah, I think it will.